Good afternoon, all.
Afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good.
Okay.
Good afternoon. How did your assignment coming along? Do you need any help, assistance on the quiz and the assignment?
I can say so far all good from my side.
Okay, we will discuss further to pad it up, to make it a bit more substantial, lah. Some of them have submitted, but very, very short answer. So for the assignment, I think we will go through one model example, so you can pad it up more, lah. Huh? Uh, 10 minutes, another 5-10 minutes for the others to drift in. So today we will look at the assignment in more detail. We will go through the financial crisis, the 2008, how auditors could have affected, changed the course of history, like if they put in the correct regulations, and all the other scandals, accounting scandals. Recently, there's a few more very big ones, which I have put in the WhatsApp for you to follow. Some Indian companies and European companies. Have you all heard of the Lehman Brothers case? The Lehman Brothers in 2008. There's one big investment bank that collapsed that triggered the full-scale 2008 financial crisis. Do you know anything about the Lehman Brothers? It's a very big investment bank in the United States. Anybody know about it? Maybe we'll, before we go to do the assignment together in class, we will watch one of the documentary that summarizes the causes of the 2008 financial crisis. I'm waiting for the others to brief in. Maybe we can have a look at that.
The Crisis of Credit, visualized. What is the credit crisis? It's a worldwide financial fiasco involving terms you've probably heard like subprime mortgages, collateralized debt obligations, frozen credit markets, and credit default swaps. Who's affected? Everyone. How did it happen? Here's how. The credit crisis brings two groups of people together, homeowners and investors. Homeowners represent their mortgages, and investors represent their money. These mortgages represent houses, and this money represents large institutions like pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign funds, mutual funds, etc. These groups are brought together through the financial system, a bunch of banks and brokers commonly known as Wall Street. While it may not seem like it, these banks on Wall Street are closely connected to these houses on Main Street. To understand how, let's start at the beginning. Years ago, the investors are sitting on their pile of money, looking for a good investment to turn into more money. Traditionally, they go to the U.S. Federal Reserve, where they buy Treasury bills, believed to be the safest investment. But in the wake of the dot-com bust in September 11th, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan lowers interest rates to only 1% to keep the economy strong. 1% is a very low return on investment, so the investors say, no thanks. On the flip side, this means banks on Wall Street can borrow from the Fed for only 1%. Add to that general surpluses from Japan, China, and the Middle East, and there's an abundance of cheap credit. This makes borrowing money easy for banks and causes them to go crazy with leverage. Leverage is borrowing money to amplify the outcome of a deal. Here's how it works. In a normal deal, someone with $10,000 buys a box for $10,000. He then sells it to someone else for $11,000. For a $1,000 profit, a good deal. But using leverage, someone with $10,000 would go borrow $990,000 more, giving him $1 million in hand. Then he goes and buys 100 boxes with his $1 million and sells them to someone else for $1,100,000. Then he pays back his $990,000 plus $10,000 in interest. And after his initial $10,000, he's left with a $90,000 profit versus the other guy's $1,000. Leverage turns good deals into great deals. This is a major way banks make their money. So Wall Street takes out a ton of credit, makes great deals, and grows tremendously rich, and then pays it back. The investors see this and want a piece of the action, and this gives Wall Street an idea. They can connect the investors to the homeowners through mortgages. Here's how it works. A family wants a house, so they save for a down payment and contact a mortgage broker. The mortgage broker connects the family to a lender who gives them a mortgage. The broker makes a nice commission. The family buys a house and becomes homeowners. This is great for them because housing prices have been rising practically forever. Everything works out nicely. One day, the lender gets a call from an investment banker who wants to buy the mortgage. The lender sells it to him for a very nice fee. The investment banker then borrows millions of dollars and buys thousands more mortgages and puts them into a nice little box. This means that every month he gets the payments from the homeowners of all the mortgages in the box. Then he sicks his banker wizards on it to work their financial magic, which is basically cutting it into 3 slices: safe, okay, and risky. They pack the slices back up in the box and call it a collateralized debt obligation, or CDO. A CDO works like 3 cascading trays. As money comes in, the top tray fills first, then spills over into the middle, and whatever is left into the bottom. The money comes from homeowners paying off their mortgages. If some owners don't pay and default on their mortgage, less money comes in and the bottom tray may not get filled. This makes the bottom tray riskier and the top tray safer. To compensate for the higher risk, the bottom tray receives a higher rate of return, while the top receives a lower, but still nice return. To make the top even safer, banks will insure it for a small fee called a credit default swap. The banks do all of this work so that credit rating agencies will stamp the top slice as a safe AAA rated investment, the highest, safest rating there is. The OK slice is BBB, still pretty good. and they don't bother to rate the risky slice. Because of the AAA rating, the investment banker can sell the safe slice to the investors who only want safe investments. He sells the OK slice to other bankers, and the risky slices to hedge funds and other risk takers. The investment banker makes millions. He then repays his loans. Finally, the investors have found a good investment for their money, much better than the 1% Treasury bills. They're so pleased they want more CDO slices. So the investment banker calls up the lender, wanting more mortgages. The lender calls up the broker for more homeowners, but the broker can't find anyone. Everyone that qualifies for a mortgage already has one, but they have an idea. When homeowners default on their mortgage, the lender gets the house, and houses are always increasing in value. Since they're covered if the homeowners default, lenders can start adding risk to new mortgages, not requiring down payments, no proof of income, no documents at all. And that's exactly what they did. So instead of lending to responsible homeowners, called prime mortgages, they started to get some that were, well, less responsible. These are subprime mortgages. This is the turning point. So, just like always, the mortgage broker connects the family with a lender and a mortgage, making his commission. The family buys a big house. The lender sells the mortgage to the investment banker, who turns it into a CDO and sells slices to the investors and others. This actually works out nicely for everyone and makes them all rich. No one was worried because as soon as they sold the mortgage to the next guy, it was his problem. If the homeowners were to default, they didn't care. They were selling off their risk to the next guy and making millions, like playing hot potato with a time bomb. Not surprisingly, the homeowners default on their mortgage, which at this moment is owned by the banker. This means he forecloses and one of his monthly payments turns into a house. No big deal. He puts it up for sale. But more and more of his monthly payments turn into houses. Now there are so many houses for sale on the market, creating more supply than there is demand, and housing prices aren't rising anymore. In fact, they plummet. This creates an interesting problem for homeowners still paying their mortgages. As all the houses in their neighborhood go up for sale, the value of their house goes down, and they start to wonder why they're paying back their $300,000 mortgage when the house is now worth only $90,000. They decide that it doesn't make sense to continue paying, even though they can afford to, and they walk away from their house. Default rates sweep the country, and prices plummet. Now the investment banker is basically holding a box full of worthless houses. He calls up his buddy, the investor, to sell his CDO, but the investor isn't stupid and says, no thanks. He knows that the stream of money isn't even a dribble anymore. The banker tries to sell to everyone, but nobody wants to buy his bomb. He's freaking out because he borrowed millions, sometimes billions of dollars to buy this bomb, and he can't pay it back. Whatever he tries, he can't get rid of it. But he's not the only one. The investors have already bought thousands of these bombs. The lender calls up trying to sell his mortgage, but the banker won't buy it, and the broker is out of work. The whole financial system is frozen, and things get dark. Everybody starts going bankrupt. But that's not all. The investor calls up the homeowner and tells him that his investments are worthless. And you can begin to see how the crisis flows in a cycle. Welcome to the crisis of credit.
Okay, so this is basically a pictorial diagram summary lah of the global financial crisis, what triggered the crisis in the 2008, and that crisis caused the US to print a lot of money to save the economy. They call quantitative easing. They print tons and tons and trillions of money. America is the only country in the world that can print money lah, helicopter money they call it. So all this caused inflation, right, to happen later on, which is what we're having now. So now they're trying to reverse direction and raising interest rates. So this trigger another problem. Okay, so this is to give you an idea, a summary idea of apa yang berlaku in 2008, the trigger, the crisis for the whole world. In fact, till today, we are still suffering some effects of it. I think one or two countries actually went bankrupt because of this. There's a country called Iceland. Iceland banks invested a lot in this subprime mortgage that was issued US, and basically the banking system in Iceland collapsed because they were overexposed to these subprime mortgage loans, and Iceland actually went bankrupt during in 2008-2009. Many people commit suicide because they lost their life savings, so on. And even Singapore pension fund lost a lot of money because they also invested in these products. So Singapore, termasuk lah, I think termasuk. Malaysia was not really affected in terms of investment because you remember Dr. Mahathir has imposed capital control in Malaysia after 1997 Asian financial crisis. So because of the capital control, banks in Malaysia are not allowed to invest in these international subprime mortgage loans. So indirectly, Malaysia was saved from the worst effect of the financial crisis. Just to give you a historical perspective. Okay, now let's look at the assignment again. Okay. Share this. Okay, can you see this? The question? Well, the question is, okay, I was just going through, some of you have handed in, but the answer given is a bit too short lah. All right, I've gone through it. I think you need to tambah sikit to make it more meaty, because it's worth 20 marks. So this example is by previous student, reasonably good effort, to put in the kind of standard that's expected lah. So this particular student did 20 pages of it. Altogether, she got 7,377 words for this particular question. So if yours is less than that, you need to tambah, okay? So this particular one that we're looking at, submission was 20 pages. I think the font size may be 14, 13, doesn't matter lah. Font size up to you all, with about 7,300 words, okay? So the question is, boleh Capital Market and Services Act, Companies Act, and auditors prevent recurrence of the 2008 global financial crisis? So by now you all should know what the global crisis is lah. It is a crisis that was triggered in the United States because of the property bubble, which was triggered by too low an interest rate in US. They have reduced interest rate to about 1%. It's very, very low, all-time low at that time. So this trigger people to speculate in the property market. So that trigger banks lending uncontrollably to people who are not qualified to buy houses, but they bought houses on the belief that property price will never come down. So you need to write some kind of background story on 8 global crisis. You Google, you'll find a lot of materials lah. We prevent the recurrence of scandals such as Enron, WorldCom, Bernie Madoff, Juniper Gold Ponzi scheme. Last week we saw a video presentation on the Juniper Gold Ponzi scheme. Okay, it's interesting. Mustafa Mahathir was invited to give a talk, which he did, and he was actually praising Juniper Gold for for doing good thing. Mega Media is a con job done by the Singaporean. The CEO and the CFO were Singaporeans. They basically used the company to cheat the banks. Transmile is a transport parcel transport company. Yeah, okay. Creative accounting means what false accounting lah. So for example, we have Server Dynamic, and recently I sent you Adani, the one Indian company, on the WhatsApp, and a few other cases that involve hundreds of millions of US dollars creative accounting. So this is not going to disappear. More and more will appear as time goes on. So it's something that needs to be monitored and controlled carefully. Okay, so now see how we can tackle this question. So I suggest to answer this question is first, you answer the first part first, which is, can capital market, right? Market Services Act, Companies Act, and auditors. First of all, you define what is Capital Market Service Act. Okay. So somebody this student just put down there, Capital Market and Services Act was introduced in 2007 by repealing the Securities Industry Act and the Futures Industry Act, consolidate into one act lah. The act functions to regulate and to provide for matters relating to activities, markets, intermediaries in the capital markets, for matters consequential and incidental thereto. Okay, this is a good introduction, but you need to expand further for this assignment. Remember, how many sections are there to the Capital Market Service Act? If you remember, there are 13 section. There are 13 sections. So in this assignment, can you name that 13 sections in very brief summary lah? So if we do that, your answer really almost like a page. Okay. Any questions on this from the floor, please? Do unmute and feel free to ask any question now, because we need to discuss, and it'd be useful to know what input you have done in and what problems they have, so that we can help you to do a better assignment. Any questions? First of all, can you hear me? You can hear me, can
Sure.
you?
For this, we need to put the
Yes,
references
we can hear,
also.
sir.
Good. Yes, at the end of the assignment, you need to put some kind of reference. Otherwise, you'll be accused of plagiarism, So, like this particular student had actually put at the back all the references, where she did the research, that kind of thing. Like if you Google, I think the source will be also mentioned. All right. So you need to put the references at the back of the assignment, maybe half a page, the references. So in this case, she did 20 pages. One page or half a page was dedicated to the references. Okay. So to beef up the answer is how to tackle this question is, in Capital Market Service Act, Companies Act, and auditors prevent blah blah blah. But before you even do that, provide a brief explanation. What is the Capital Market Services Act 2007, right? You may want to take a camera, take a snapshot of this, so that you have an idea how to do the assignment as a reference. But don't copy exactly the same. It has to be different in terms of the presentation, but just to give you an idea how to approach this assignment. So if you finish this assignment, the purpose is that you have a pretty good idea of what the Market Services Act, Companies Act, and auditors, and what they do, and what historically have been the big financial scandals that I think Malaysian students tend to be very homely. They don't really look at international things happening, although it's a very big issue. Our students tend to be home focused, right? So the idea is to widen your knowledge so that next time when you talk to people overseas or read journals and magazines, you are aware that there's a big thing called the 2008 global financial crisis, which has big political implication in America. That started the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX for short, right? And this Sarbanes-Oxley Act briefly is the mirror our Capital Market Services Act. In fact, we copy from Sarbanes-Oxley Act, almost like in the form that they have, we also copy the same thing. So basically, Malaysia follow international happenings lah. So when the US or the UK or Australia have a best practice being put in place, Malaysia generally will follow a few months later, 6 months later. So the CMSA actually is a watered down version of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in the US, SOX. All right. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act was actually enacted in the year 2001 after the Enron WorldCom scandal. Right. So the act was to prevent a recurrence of this creative accounting issue at that time. So this is the historical perspective of the Capital Market Services Act. But unfortunately, even after the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, now we got very big scandals that came in 2008, which is the global financial crisis. So some people say maybe Lehman Brothers collapse triggered the 2008 global financial crisis. Or is it the crisis is already brewing and then Lehman Brothers is a symptom, right? You cannot blame Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers could be a victim of what's happened in the mortgage crisis, housing boom, and housing bust, right? But now later on, you will see a Lehman Brothers documentary about why and how the bank collapsed. It's a very big bank. So the bank collapse had a chain reaction throughout the world because of counterparty risk. So when Lehman Brothers died, it does not mean that Lehman Brothers will die alone, because Lehman Brothers does transactions and have business relationship and funding arrangements with other banks and also all over the world, right? So if Lehman Brothers collapse, it will trigger a collapse of many other banks, including insurance companies. And also it may have impacted the hard economy also, like General Motors and manufacturing company, big one, cannot pay the salary because the banking system got frozen as a result of Lehman Brothers collapse. Okay, so to answer this question, define Capital Markets Act and then name the 13 sections of the Act summary. Okay, so for Companies Act, again, it says here that Companies Act is an act to provide registration, administration, and dissolution of companies and corporation, and to provide related matter, whatever, by the student. But I suggest that in addition to that, name the sections of the Companies Act relating to accounts and auditing. You can say 243, 244, just repeat what you have done in the quiz lab, but in a shorter form, so that people reading your paper will have an idea, okay, what is CMSA, by the way? What is Akta Syarikat in Malaysia, 2016, so what's this? Okay, so Companies Act, find it lah. So again, already your answer will be about 2 page already lah. Should be okay. And auditors. So a lot of people just put auditors, full stop. But auditors got many types, So to answer this question, maybe what you can do is in your lecture notes, you can see the lecture notes, which is in your WhatsApp. You find that in chapter 1 and chapter 2, there are some definition of what are the types of auditors. For example, we have external auditors. Okay, so who are external auditors? They are appointed in accordance to Akta Syarikat. Once a year, they perform audit on companies. Now, there are also internal auditors. Internal auditors can be outsourced or in-house. basically they are required by Bursa listing rule, and they report directly to the audit committee. Okay. Then remember, there's also the Auditor General, not the Attorney General, Auditor General. They audit the government, because the external auditor don't audit the government. Under Akta Syarikat, they only audit companies. Auditor General, government. Okay.
Mr. Ken,
Then,
sorry I interrupt. Mr. Ken, are you explaining for the quiz now? Because this question
no,
is
not the quiz. It's actually for the assignment. There's some overlap lah.
Huh?
Yeah, I agree, because there's some overlap, because the quiz also cover some of that. So there's some kind of repetition also lah.
But the initial question is only these two questions. You just A and B, prevent the crisis and also explain the scandal. So
Yeah.
actually I just submitted. So I have about 12
No,
pages
doesn't
of
matter.
reporting.
Doesn't matter. You can resubmit again. Yeah, you can. You just tambah lah. Just add on lah. Add on. You know what I mean? That's why I
But-
wanted soft copy, don't PDF. You can just add on to it. Build
Add
on
on
your
the function of the auditor in this
Yes.
individual assignment.
Yes, correct. In fact, if you've done it in your quiz, you can
Yeah, we done
cut
it
and
in the quiz
copy.
actually.
Cut and copy and paste it into here.
Oh,
So it's because to answer this question, there's really the introductory part, isn't it? Can Capital Market Service Act, Companies Act, and auditors, blah 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 blah. But then before you can go to A and B, you must define what is the Capital Market Service Act. Imagine that the person who read this does not know anything about CMSA, Companies Act, and auditors lah.
I do explain on the policy that should be implemented in the corporation instead of the function of the auditor to be prevent this crisis. So in my report, I provide that, because auditor is only one of the personnel who need to perform the scope. But
Yeah,
somehow
correct.
the policy have to be implemented as well, Mr. Ken, right?
Correct.
So,
Yes.
okay, if I can choose not to rewrite my report, because if
Can.
I
Yeah.
will be confused, because I'm
Yeah,
very pembaris, because I'm very straight one. I understand that
Yeah.
what the need, what this need and what that need, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I
This
understand already
is
why you split the three from quiz, from individual, and from presentation, because you're trying to simplify the function of the audit to us. So the ACTA, and in each of the tasks, actually, I slowly can understand already what
Good.
that you try to deliver actually.
Yeah. Yeah, this is only a suggestion now. What I'm doing is
Okay,
because some of the other
thank you.
students completely did not see the picture that you see, so they put.
Because
So
I'm
this
not the person who can lengthy the reporting, but I prefer to
go straight to the
understand
point.
what
Go straight to the-
I understand what that you try to
Good.
deliver, because I
Yeah.
very struggle in this subject actually.
Yeah, good. But it's
Okay,
very
thank you.
interesting because a lot of things are happening now in the world, like
I now I understand already why every time in the class you keep on share the video. So I slowly understand already. Before this, actually I hardly to digest that. So now I understand. You try to simplify and then deliver the point.
Yeah. Because this is a real event happening, unfolding before your eyes. It's not something like a history, It's actually happening now.
Yeah. It even get more worse now. I understand.
Yeah,
Okay,
getting
thank you.
more worse. But Malaysia is doing something it's interesting to watch lah. We are trying to improve our administration of the Capital Market Service Act, because our Attorney General, not Auditor General, the what do you call it, the legal side Attorney General, go and turn the regulation upside down.
So this particular for our country, it can see in corporate governance policy over there, because you are pointing out the Malaysia code, because right?
Yeah.
Later when you go to that assignment, I will ask a few things. So my question for this are complete already. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Malaysia is doing something that is not so good lah for this. So, but the new government, unity government, has now put in a proposal to change the law. So you can put in your answer that this is a good step going forward to segregate the duty of the Attorney General, not Auditor General. A lot of people get confused. The Attorney General from having the power to approve prosecution. Because if the Prime Minister control the Attorney General, then of course you will not be able to prosecute any of the power that is close to the Prime Minister. So they now want to remove that reporting, the reporting channels, right? and also to remove the power to approve prosecution away from the Attorney General and give it to the prosecutor. So in the United States, the prosecutor get the final say whether to jalan or don't jalan prosecution. That's why in the United States, they can even prosecute they can impeach the president of the United States, all right, which they have actually done in the past. So, for example, now they're looking at going to charge Donald Trump and Biden for hiding some documents, whether accidental or not, I don't know lah. So this is the system of the regulatory framework must be independent, so that we cannot blame auditors for everything lah. There must be also a system, right, where things can move very independent form. Okay, so for those who have not really done this, I suggest that this is the approach we will take, right? So define external auditor, internal auditor, auditor general to audit the government, forensic auditor, the one that audit the fraud cases lah. So now there's some rumor, not rumor lah, in fact it's in the media where the current MACC is investigating the previous ex-Prime Minister and also Health Minister on procurement, right? Procurement. So basically, MACC will be sending forensic auditors to go and dig through all the evidence or investigate, see whether alleged offences has occurred or not. Due diligence auditors are for contracts, merger and acquisitions. Then statutory auditors are auditors for income tax, sales tax, service tax, The EPF also got auditor and come and tell you tax. Then very interesting, we have auditor of the external auditor, auditor of the auditor, audit oversight body, right? This is part under SC. So this is to ensure that the external auditor do the job. So auditors are very tough now. They have to audit people and people also audit them. Okay. So so you define auditor, not just external auditor. You got also other type of auditors, and they all play a role in terms of check and balance and investigation. Now coming back to the global financial crisis, okay. So if the auditors are doing the job at that time, now we know that from your research, if you watch the video later on, is that a lot of the loan documentation is fake. That means, when you apply for bank loan, you have to fill up an application form, right? And in the form, you will say where you work, what's the salary, marry, how many children, what's the income, blah, 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 and all those things. And then that documents will then be submitted to the banks and then go to the lending committee. Then lending committee will approve, then go to the risk management committee, they have the final say. Then only the loan are dispersed. This is how it normally works. But during the financial crisis, where interest rate was so low, I think in 2001, central bank, Federal Reserve in US reduced the interest rate to only 1%. So of course, when the loan interest rate is so cheap, people want to speculate because money is cheap. So this sparked off a housing boom. Because people got nowhere to park the money. 1%, FD will be 1%, maybe 1.5%, which is not enough to keep track with inflation. So a lot of people start to look at buying properties. So housing was booming. So prices of house keep going up. So the bank officer also make a lot of money. In America, there are brokers. Brokers will arrange will go and look around for customers for the banks, and they earn a commission. Kalau they successfully can get a client for the bank. So gradually, all the people who can buy a house got a house already. So the only people left for them to market this mortgage, this housing loan, are people who don't qualify. So there are a lot of people who got no job, no nothing. This broker will approach them, hey, come on, I can help you to do up the documents. We can put down what job and fix some figures. Bohong sikit. So this bohong loan documentation, go to the bank. The bank also close one eye, because to them, they're thinking property price always go up, right? It doesn't come down. For them, the perspective. So if the house prices keep going up and then the land is loaned to these people who got no job, nothing one, and they cannot pay later on, then they sell the house, or the bank is covered because it's a collateral. Collateral is the house. So to the bank, it's a no-brainer. Just keep lending because you earn more and more commission. The staff make millions from commission brokerage. Broker make brokerage. So everybody is happy. So this broker and the bank officer go to the countryside, approach people with no job, never mind, come, I help you to get your loan. This becomes very, very widespread. Now, actually, the auditors could have discovered this, isn't it? How would the auditors discover this? Anyone? How would the auditors discover this? In the United States and Malaysia, external auditors go in once a year to do the audit, right? Under Companies Act. So from the audit, they will do sampling. And one of the sampling they do is for kawalan dalam, internal control and risk management. So they would definitely ask for customers' file, right? So just like external auditor come and see you, can I have your debtors file? So when you go to the bank, they will ask for customers' files. So they will select some 5% the sample. They won't audit everything, but 5%. Now, if the cheating is widespread, I'm sure this will turn up in the sample. Okay, so the auditor go through and find, hey, it's funny, there's no evidence of job, and they should understand the business model also. They should be well versed with the housing industry. So this is a red flag. And who does the external auditor report to? They would report via the accounts to the shareholder. They could have put in a note into the auditor's report, but they didn't at that time. Okay, they still sign off the accounts as clean. Now, internal auditors are reporting to the audit committee of the bank. Now, if internal auditors are doing the job, they should be able to detect this fake documentation. If they don't detect, it means they're not doing the job. So this internal auditor could have found out and report to it. Okay. In terms of Auditor General, okay, maybe there's some whistleblower who report to Auditor General, right? They can take up investigation from there. So in terms of during those times, the external auditor and internal auditor could have whistleblow, okay, on these things. And if the audit committee is brave enough, they would have taken action by reporting to the government and to the authorities. But they didn't at that time. Why? Because the audit committee member are independent directors, so-called independent directors. Basically, they are the kawan-kawan or friends of the CEO, the major shareholder of the bank. So they are afraid to report also to the authorities because they may lose their board seat, and then but they'll also lose their perks and the remuneration and the director's fees. Okay, so they are not independent. So these are the role that the auditors could have played. So if you got independent external auditor, independent internal auditors, then we could have prevented, you would have prevented crisis. So the Capital Market Service Act nowadays also say the external auditor, internal auditor must whistleblow. Okay, otherwise the auditor will go to jail. Compulsory, yeah. Okay, so these are types. So to answer this question, the global crisis, for those who are not aware of it, what caused it is we already mentioned. Low interest rate in US was triggered in the year 2000 because of the attack on the Twin Tower in New York. there was a loss of confidence. So the Federal Reserve reduced interest rate about 1% per annum because they are afraid that the Twin Tower crisis or the attack on Twin Tower 2000 could trigger a recession in the United States. Okay, so because of low interest rate, a housing bubble was triggered in the US. Banks were keen to lend to anyone, even those without jobs. For subprime borrowers, bankers and brokers and consultants created fake documentation to give out even more loans because they earn very good commissions. During that time, many millionaires were created because they keep getting more and more people get loans. The banks are very happy to give them out and say they get 2% commission every loan given out. Say on average, 500,000-600,000 US dollars, right? You make 100 or 200 sales a month, they get very good income. So these banks who make the mortgages then sell the mortgage loan to investment banks. Now, investment banks are different from commercial banks. Investment bank basically a wholesale bank. They deal with trading, buying shares. They deal with IPOs. They deal with wholesale, the big corporations, okay, or pension funds. So commercial banks make the loans, then they sell these mortgage loans to the investment banks. Now, this investment bank can borrow very cheaply because of the low interest rate. So they borrow from the market or from the Federal Reserve, they borrow at 1%, and then they use this money to buy these mortgage loans off the commercial banks. And the return they can get from these mortgage loans, if the buyers, house owner continue to service the loans, is say about 3-4%, 2%. They make very good income, right? Without taking into consideration of risk. So they borrow at 1%, they buy the mortgage loan that actually people give them 2% return, they make 100% return on the margin. And then to the commercial bank that sell the mortgage loan, they're very happy because now they don't have this on the balance sheet. The problem, if it happens, is not the problem anymore. The problem goes to the investment bank. Okay, the problem goes to the investment bank because they already sold it to them. So what happened is that the investment bank would pay the bank the mortgage purchase price. The banks will use this money to then create more subprime toxic loan. The cycle is there. They keep repeating the process and earn the commission and the processing fee. Okay. So these exotic products, these investment banks that buy these mortgage acquisitions, they have bright idea called financial engineering. Now, what is financial engineering? Financial engineering means this investment bank will try to package products into smaller units called subprime mortgage units. Okay. They call them securities. So this investment bank put them into a kind of trust, unit trust, not unit trust, into some kind of artificial entity, package them as subprime mortgage security, and then turn around and sell them to pension funds, retirement funds, and to professional investors, right? So if they do that, maybe the investors that buy them off can get about 3-4% return. Yeah. So the pension funds buy them because low interest rate outside. So they invest in this product in order to get a higher interest rates. So the investment bank will profit from the sale because they buy it from the investment bank, say at 100 million, but they sell it off to this, what do you call that, pension funds at say 1.5 million. So they make a spread there, all right? So everybody's happy because pension fund thought it was quite safe, you know. The view is that property price will always go up. So when the Federal Reserve start to increase interest rates in the 2008-09, everything exploded. Now, you know what happened when interest rate increased? Like Malaysia now is increasing now, the interest rate, Bank Negara increased interest rate. Housing will cool down because people will get scared, that the interest rate is high, they're not able to service the loans. So to start off with, is many of these people who buy houses in the 2007 and here, they really don't have a job. They don't have a job. So the brokers and the bank promise them no need to service the loan for 1-2 years holiday. They call loan holiday lah, to entice them to buy. So that means by 2008, many of these subprime lenders will have to service the loan already. So many of them will not be able to service because they have no job. Okay, and the worst still, the property price start to drop. Right, start to drop. So when the property price drop, what happened? The house owner just walk away. In the United States, the rule is they can just leave the key in the house and walk away. The bank cannot chase them, chase for balance. In the United States, they protect this way lah. So many of the house owner walk away. Okay, they walk away. They just leave the key in the house and then so the banks, investment bank, get stuck with many houses. Many houses. So property price spiral because more houses come into the market to sell. So the price keep dropping. So when price keep dropping, even people who can pay for the housing loan also don't want to pay. They say, why I want to pay for the house when the price dropping? So they also walk away. So everything exploded lah. So this triggered the subprime crisis and a lot of institutions starting to collapse. So Lehman Brothers collapsed in September 2008. So everybody blamed Lehman Brothers for causing the 2008 global financial crisis. But to me, I think Lehman Brothers is probably a victim. Is a symptom of what happened. They didn't really cause the global financial crisis. My view lah. Okay, although they may have contributed because their collapse is so big. Okay, it's so big that it triggered a chain reaction around the whole world. That even a country like Iceland also collapsed. Okay. Any questions so far? You're still tackling the first part. So this is a brief history of the global financial crisis, how it happened. So question asked is, how come auditor never do the job? Right? So annual external audit should have discovered the fraud and fake documentation. But whistleblowing policy was weak during then. There was no official whistleblowing policy until this bank collapsed. Then they come out with more stricter whistleblowing laws. Okay, so Malaysia also now got whistleblowing laws in the Capital Market Service Act and in the Companies Act. So in our view is that whistleblowing law is very useful for preventing this kind of crisis because it will encourage early detection. Right, early detection because the warning system is there to set off the alarm. Okay, the alarm. So the alarm is the external auditors and the internal auditors. However, if the external auditors report to the authorities like the Securities Commission, Bank Negara, and so on, or even MACC, because if you fake documents, it can be considered as a corrupt act also because they get commissioned that way, the authorities must also take action. So in order to prevent the financial crisis, the whistleblowing channels are there, and it must be seen that the authorities are also doing enforcement. So in our case, the Attorney General sent a false signal or wrong signal by giving summons for cases that are criminal in nature and override the Securities Commission with corporate policeman. But this is not new lah. So recently, Credit Suisse in US is found, Switzerland, is found to have fake customer files. Why they fake the customer files? So that they show that there's growth in customer, because the work pressure is so high, they have competition. They have to keep showing that they perform well. So they actually created fake documents in order to show fake results, so to say. So this matter is under investigation. So regulations, so server dynamic case was a bad signal. So perhaps another way to answer this question, perhaps if the world has adopted Islamic banking, the 2008 global financial crisis could have been averted. Why did I say that? I think this is a useful answer to put in. Perhaps if the world has adopted Islamic banking, the 2008 global financial crisis could have been averted. The reason why I say that is that because the Western form of banking promotes financial engineering. Now, what is financial engineering? That means the Masale or the Westerner, they like to do this, to design derivative product. There's very little to do with the actual housing loan or the underlying transaction, but it's an instrument to gamble, to speculate and take a position. Okay, so in Islamic banking, for example, housing loan is you must have a real house. You cannot have a house derivative product. You cannot sell a piece of paper that's not backed by the tangible asset. So if they have adopted this Islamic banking prospect, this method, then financial engineering would not be allowed. That means Lehman Brothers would not be able to go and package this mortgage loan into a special vehicle called the collateralized mortgage loan derivatives, which is very hard to understand and sell this poisonous product, pension funds. And this has triggered the collapse of the financial system around the world. Because when they sell this product, they don't just sell it in America, they sell it to Europe, they sell it to Japan, Singapore, throughout the whole world. So this toxic product is being sent everywhere. So when Lehman Brothers collapse, all this product become bad. And people who depended on this product for retirement, pension fund, they all die because all disappeared to the thin air in the holding collapse. Okay, so in your answer, I think this is a good one also to use is if they have adopted Islamic banking, a global financial crisis could have been averted. Okay. And also, you're talking about ethics. Islamic banking will not allow fake loan documentation also because there's also a Sharia auditor going around to audit clients with Islamic principles. So if you have fake documents, it go against one of the tenure, or one of the tenants. So in Malaysia, we have banks that each of the bank have an Islamic segment. For example, Maybank also got Islamic banking, Islamic Maybank. But Maybank by itself is not considered as a Sharia compliant because it's a commercial bank. Okay, so the housing loan is taken to the Islamic banking segment, then maybe less chance of banking happening. Any questions so far on this? Okay, so we have tackled basically this part of the question. Can the capital market service define what they are? We talk about the global financial crisis and some of the things that could have prevented it. So our laws in place, I would think that it could prevent a recurrence of the 2008 financial crisis. For example, we have external auditors, we have internal auditors, Also, Bank Negara have so the bank investigators to come and kacau them, the banks that come and check. And our independent directors now are made truly independent because they have to go through some test checklists before they qualify as pengarah bebas. And a lot of liabilities are put on the pengarah bebas independent director if they don't do a job. They hefty fine, so on. So whistleblowing regulation being put in now in CMSA and Akta Syarikat. I think this go a long way to prevent the recurrence of scandals like global financial crisis, because management will be afraid that the staff, right, because actually quietly go and report this to the authorities. But if the authorities do not act on this whistleblowing, then it's a waste of time also. So you take two to tango. The authorities must be willing to take action, right, immediately upon receiving whistleblowing reports from. Maybe I should also add, maybe they should put in some reward, isn't it? Remuneration. Kalau ada remuneration, rewards, more people will feel like they want to use it. So in the United States, there is actually a reward for whistleblowing and also protection scheme available for those who whistleblow. But Malaysia don't have, no? Malaysia only they protect the job, SAG, but they don't protect you from bodily harm if that other fella or that company decide to pay a gangster to come up. Okay. I think you all heard of Lehman Brothers before. No, you watch a documentary on the Lehman Brothers to give you an idea. You know, it is to do with the financial crisis, 2008, and then when Lehman Brothers collapsed, that was a starting point of the whole crisis, where the whole world went on fire. So you decide for yourself whether Lehman Brothers has caused the financial crisis in 2008 or they are the victims. They are actually a symptom. They did not cause the financial crisis. They simply collapsed because of the subprime loans, because of low interest rates and because of lack of regulations and lack of oversight by auditors and so on. So they were affected in that sense. But I have no straight answer for that. You have to decide for yourself what is the true reason for the. We will watch that video first, then we'll come back later to explore other parts of the questions. Okay. Before we go on to the Lehman Brothers case study, the video, any other questions now? Any questions? Okay, for submission of assignments, those who already finished the quiz, you can submit that one first. The assignment, maybe after today, you can submit next week. Today, we will also go through, there's one online test, right? So we will go through some multiple choice questions. There are 10 multiple choice questions. We will go through some sample today. Multiple choice questions for the online test. Online test is 1 hour. So the questions basically is based on corporate governance. You know, the CG statement in your pembentangan in there. What are the three principles, and what are the best practices, and how are auditors, the relevance of auditors in the code on corporate governance. Okay, that afterwards. So we'll be going through your exam question this next week. There for you all, and also for the online take-home assignment test. Okay. So those who have finished the quiz, please submit. Submit it to what I put in a WhatsApp, to this auditing class@gmail.com. Submit in words form, soft copy, do not PDF it, so that do amendment as discussed as we add on. Those who finish, of course, you can. If you want to send in your assignment, you also can send in your assignment. Then for the pembentangan, you've got choices. You can prepare the video, 5 to 10 minutes video, and send to me. or you may opt to do live session. It will be recorded, right? And you can do a presentation here, or we can do a presentation on a range time on Zoom, where you WhatsApp me, and then I'll put it on Zoom, and you can come on and record the presentation, 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, we don't have much time for that. So, in fact, if you want to come live today, also can. You want to unmute yourself and put in yourself in the video, we can record that. That will be counted for your pembentangan. So the question for pembentangan basically is you select one company and you run through their compliance with corporate governance, right? And whether they comply or don't comply, right? It's not difficult. There's no right or wrong answer lah. So actually, I encourage you, if you can do it today, you can do it today. If not, you can private WhatsApp me. If you can make an arrangement lah. One of the evenings, we can come on Zoom for that. Any question on this? Let me see, there's a message on here. Yeah, they got a message here. We can see the flow about CDO from mortgage bonds and the short movie called The Big Short. Yes, that's a good one. In fact, this movie, The Big Short, is a prize winner. It's got it won a prize for this particular one. If you have time, yeah, I would suggest that you also follow Muhammad. Is it Muhammad to watch this movie called The Big Short? I think you can get it on Netflix. That's the issue where the global financial crisis 2008, and Michael Burry was a person who actually discovered and make a lot of money from shorting the market because he knew that the housing collapse is coming. Right, Michael Burry actually did a research, and he's of the view during that time, before it collapsed, that it's going to collapse. So he took a position and shorted the market. And because of that, he's a very, very rich man today. Because when he shorted the market, you make money when the market collapses. Okay, thanks, Mohammed, for that message. Okay, now we will look at Lehman Brothers, okay, which is the history of this very big investment bank and how it collapsed. And it collapsed partially because of the CEO. The CEO is a madman, also is a crazy guy who like to take a lot of risks, and he's a very aggressive person. So I leave it to you to decide. This is a documentary. I have to watch out for unforeseen bad language. I don't think there's any bad language, but I'm not sure. So I hope you will excuse if somebody says something. Documentary. Okay, but I think it's basically quite a clean cut. Okay, we'll watch the Lehman Brothers now.
Room there. I have been told that
He wants to put an end to rumors that the firm is in trouble. Crisis? What crisis?
Every one of you should feel confident and proud. Our firm is strong today, and we will emerge from this cycle even stronger. We've done it before, and we will do it again.
12 weeks later, the bank went bust.
Lehman Brothers suffering a spectacular downfall. Its stock at one point this year sold for...
Go to jail right now!
This is the inside account of what caused a Wall Street giant to collapse.
This is really stupendous. This has happened.
I think in the history of business in the last 50 years, it was the most extraordinary weekend there's been.
It was the biggest bankruptcy in history and the tipping point into global recession.
Lehman's was a seminal moment in the sense that it illustrated these two big problems that if we didn't solve, things would get a huge amount worse.
The panic that followed hurt us all as mortgages dried up, stock markets tumbled, and businesses went to the wall. So why did one bankruptcy have such catastrophic consequences for the world?
I don't think any of us easily anticipated that we would see the sort of financial panic that we saw after the failure of Lehman Brothers. So this has been an extraordinarily serious set of events.
We did not have those tools coming into the crisis, and I think that was a tragic mistake for the United States and for the rest of the world.
This is what really happened at the tipping point of the crash in 2008. Those who were there on the inside tell the story of the weekend that changed the world. When America's Treasury Secretary arrived in New York a year ago this week, he faced a dilemma. Hank Paulson, the man in charge of US economic policy, had flown up from Washington because Lehman Brothers, one of Wall Street's oldest investment banks, was hemorrhaging money. Should he keep it alive with a cash injection or let the markets take their course? And if he let it go bust, what will be the consequences for the global economy? With only an hour's notice, he summoned the chief executives of America's leading banks, the so-called masters of the universe, to a crisis meeting.
So it was Friday afternoon. I was in Merrill's Midtown offices. It was raining quite hard. I got a phone call at 5 p.m., be at the Fed at 6 p.m. this evening. Those type of phone calls are always bad.
And this was just about as bad as it gets.
And I think it was me who used the word Armageddon. This is going to be Armageddon.
The Fed, the New York Federal Reserve, the stage on which the crisis played out, is around the corner from Wall Street. The granite fortress is a symbol of American economic might.
I don't think there was a person there who didn't understand, at least to a large extent, the stakes we were playing for.
We had a conference room there. I have been told that the chief executives of most of the Wall Street firms were there as well, but apparently there was another floor and other conference rooms.
We trying to do our part, to do what was being asked of us, and with a sense of the clock ticking.
I'll probably never have a weekend quite like it.
Lehman may post another $2.5 billion write-down on home loans in the third quarter.
For months, Wall Street had been worried about Lehman's because of the bank's massive property investments. With the crash in the market, it was now dangerously exposed. Shareholders were dumping stock, and other banks were withholding credit.
Lehman has lost $6.5 billion so far this year.
The bank's share price had been dropping since May.
Lehman shares have been down sharply.
But in the last 10 days, it had been in free fall. By that Friday afternoon, it was losing more than $8 million a minute. Confidence in the bank was evaporating under the glare of the media spotlight.
Has the market given up on Lehman?
We knew Lehman's was in trouble. Remember that there's a constant traffic between our Treasury and the US Treasury, between the regulators. And during that time, I spoke to Hank Paulson pretty regularly. And on the Friday evening, we knew that they would have to do something about Lehman's.
In the last few months, the fallout from the subprime mortgage crisis and the collapse in house prices had forced the US Treasury to bail out one bank and America's two biggest mortgage companies. Many assume the authorities will do the same again. But the presidential election was weeks away. On the campaign trail, the cry went out, "It's Main Street, not Wall Street, that matters." So when the bank chiefs assembled that Friday evening, it was clear from the start there'd be little sympathy from the government.
It was really Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, and Tim Geithner, the head of the New York Fed, who really were running the meeting. And they said to us, this is the problem. Lehman needs to be rescued. You have to come up with a solution. We, the government, are not going to help.
As the leaders of Wall Street wrestled with what to do about Lehman Brothers, across town at Shea Stadium, the home team, the Mets, were trailing to the Atlanta Braves. It was not a good omen. With no government bailout, two of Lehman's rivals were eager to swoop. The first was Bank of America, one of the largest banks in the United States. And the other was a British outsider, Barclays, keen to expand across the Atlantic.
We had our eyes open. We had a good opportunity of taking a very careful look at the books. We deployed a big team in New York under Bob Diamond.
We certainly didn't know what we were going to find completely in due diligence, but I can tell you for sure we wouldn't have boarded the plane in a situation as serious as the markets we're in if we weren't very serious.
It was very clear that this was going to be a seminal event in the history of the credit crunch.
Few ever imagined that America's fourth largest investment bank would fall so far and so fast. Its earlier success was largely down to one man, a larger-than-life figure, who was proud to call himself a Lehman lifer. In 1966, 20-year-old Richard Severin Fuld Jr. arrived in New York to work as an intern at Lehman Brothers. When he finished university, the bank snapped him up. Dick Fuld was driven and good at what he did, very good. Steadily and determinedly evolved and grew from a traditional investment bank, raising money and managing mergers and acquisitions for clients, to using borrowed money to play the markets itself.
I must tell you, having been with Lehman Brothers for 24 years, this is my only job. When I started off, I was lower than low, and thinking that I would stand here today and to give this address to my people, I am thrilled.
The new boss had one simple ambition: to overtake his rivals, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs.
Lehman Brothers will eventually inherit the heritage and the tradition that will let us stand alone and conquer all the people that stand in front of us. That's what I want Lehman Brothers to be. Basically to crush our enemies, like this.
Within the firm, he had godlike status. This was a man who was clearly in charge and clearly had a vision for the business. You know, would you want to get into an argument with Dick? Absolutely not, unless you were totally solid on the grounds you were arguing.
He wouldn't even acknowledge anybody. Most of the time, I would say good morning or hello to him, and you get a response back, but he's very, almost like he built the wall up around himself, and the other employees felt the same way. They wouldn't even speak to him. You know, it's almost, they'd ride in the elevator in total silence.
Fuld built up a network of over 60 offices around the world, employing more than 28,000 staff. When Lehman Brothers opened a grand new European headquarters at Canary Wharf, the bank had truly arrived.
Let me formally declare this new building open. Thank you very much.
Dick Fuld's unorthodox style of leadership meant he was admired and feared in equal measure.
Dick took the floor like a statesman, and he proceeded to deliver this fearsome attack on short sellers, the people who were depressing Lehman's share price by being short the stock. And he, rather to everyone's surprise and mystification, he said,
If we get this right today.
Dick Fuld also had an insatiable appetite for profits, with or without fava beans. And he delivered. In 1994, one share cost $4. As the economy boomed, By 2007, that investment was now worth $82, a 20-fold increase. And how had the bank done this? By expanding into lucrative new products as the market became less regulated. Highly complex products, including credit default swaps, a kind of insurance against borrowers defaulting on loans. Risk was the name of the game.
As a trader, you take risk to make profits. The more risk you take, the more money that you're playing with, the more profits you can make. In the case of Lehman Brothers, Dick Fold essentially
Okay, the reason I stopped is the bank, Lehman Brothers, is selling and dealing with all these very exotic new products. So these are called financial engineering products. So they package financial products until they become very hard to understand, and then they sell it to other investors and the pension funds, and the investment bank makes money that way. That's why Lehman Brothers makes so much money, profits. The share price went from $4 to $80 within 4 years, because these products are very, very profitable. Okay, so but it is very difficult to understand this product. Is done through financial engineering. For example, they have these mortgage securities, they package it up, and then they buy mortgages, loans from commercial banks, and then they sell it off again, right? So they create very little tangible, real benefits to the world, but by shuffling papers around and rearranging these products, they can sell off bits and pieces of this and make money. Okay, they even have insurance policies that will enable people to bet on whether a company will collapse or not, whether the bonds of the company will collapse. So we'll create this insurance units, insurance scheme, and they can sell it. To enable people to bet against the company. So it's very complicated, and the more complicated is it to understand, the more profitable it became for them if things go well, right? If things go well. Okay, so this will give you an idea what kind of products this fellow sell.